behind the iron curtain of Daystar's false prophecies, lies, deception, and spiritual manipulation, not to speak of cover-ups and abuse and bullying allegations. But let's dive deeper into some of the detractors who shame those who expose what's going on behind the Iron Curtain. Those who call Lara Lynn Thompson and others clickbait roaches and braying wolves. Well, I want to take you on an interesting journey to explore more of that. There was laughter, billowing laughter, ringing through the hallways of Daystar. Someone was holding Joni's hands. The laughter kept on ringing, and it was revealed. It was the laughter of a middle-aged man, none other than Doug Weiss, who recently realized his wife of over 30 years, who he professed to love, had abused him. Now Doug was holding Joni's hand, laughing as they walked through Daystar's hallways, and a bright future lay ahead. Reality? No. The dream of a rather, let's say, perhaps shady security guard known to put trackers on Daystar's employees' cars and show up with a gun holster at their doors. He had that dream of Joni holding hands with a man, and he recognized that man on his laughter. It was Doug Weiss. Well, it was a prophecy from God, a revelation, and from there on out, Joni knew exactly what to do. See, Joni had a history of hearing God's voice. For instance, when there were allegations of SA against her own granddaughter by Pete, allegedly, she retreated and then emerged saying, "I have heard of God. Pete is innocent." It wasn't a dream this time, it was just direct revelation apparently to Joni. Rachel, her daughter, had similar abilities because Rachel proclaimed that Pete had been cleared. Where that revelation or prophecy came from, no one knows exactly, because Pete had definitely not been cleared. So what is really happening behind the Iron Curtain that is known as Daystar, where its enablers, flying monkeys and defenders, try and ward off anyone who takes a peek behind that Iron Curtain and see what's really going on and if those prophecies truly hold any ground. You see what could be a scene out of a Shakespearean comedy has larger ripple effects. Daystar is estimated to be a $1 billion empire, and its reach is across the Christian community across the world, and it of course purports to be a Christian organization, and as such it's a very different reach, a very different ripple effect than if this was just a dysfunctional and perhaps even rather ridiculous family. See, Joni Lamb could be laughed off as some Shakespearean foolish heroine, as in Midsummer Night's Dream, temporarily blinded by lust or foolishness, running after the wrong guy. And it could be like a comical off-Broadway comedy, but that's not the case here. See, what's at stake is a $1 billion empire and the Christian community who is tithing, who is believing, who is listening to those who are now being exposed as suspected frauds and perhaps even criminal allegations. One of the most disturbing allegations is that sex is being used as an excuse for spiritual abuse. If you listen to some of the testimonies of Doug Weiss's former clients or patients who had come for help to heal their marriages with adulterous husbands primarily, but also vice versa, adulterous wives, they were given a choice to either want a divorce or heal their marriage.
Don't do that. That's the don't. Here's what you do. Validate. Validate does not mean that you agree. It doesn't mean that you agree that she should feel hopeless or despair or ugly or fat or unwanted. You're not saying I agree with you. You're saying it's valid that you feel that way. Valid. You're saying it's valid that you feel that way.
Well, many did want to heal their marriage, but once they made that choice, the path was only going into one direction, and that was forcibly, at least spiritually forcibly, having to engage in this intimacy with partners that were actively cheating on them, sometimes with hundreds or more partners. So these wives or husbands would have to risk their physical health as well as, of course, the emotional well-being to be forced into intimacy, because according to Doug Weiss's therapy, he was a Christian counselor after all, therapist, it was God's will that this would be a marriage that had intimacy, physical intimacy. See, what Doug Weiss held over these women was his assertion that Christ died on the cross for us to have good sex. That included apparently adulterers or other predators. And interestingly enough, people wonder, did Doug have a bad influence on Joni, or is Joni the driving force? But perhaps they found each other, because strangely enough, at Daystar all the time, while Doug was giving his advice to suffering spouses of adulterous partners, Joni allegedly covered up SA of her own grandchild, and as it turns out, misconduct by her own dad of that nature towards the employees. So perhaps the two found each other because they're made of the same fabric. Perhaps so, but once they found each other, it seems they have brought out the worst in each other. See, I find it also rather peculiar that Doug Weiss's excuse for leaving his marriage is that he was supposedly abused by the woman that he hailed as a wonderful wife for 30 years. But once he could claim abuse status, he automatically catapulted himself into the position of the victim. And who, after all, could blame the victim? Unless, of course, you were in Doug Weiss's therapy and the women or spouses that were cheated on, who were real victims, were allegedly re-victimized by being told it was their duty, if they wanted to save their marriage, to engage in intimacy that they weren't ready to and where the trust had been broken. Vice versa, the real victims of SA in Daystar, they never got to be heard. Instead, who put himself up as the victim was none other than Doug. And then Joni as a victim of children who would not support a marriage. Strange how that switcheroo happens, which typically in narcissistic relationships happens inevitably. The perpetrator puts themselves up as the victim and they put the victim into the shoes of the perpetrator. But wait, what about the YouTubers, the Christian community who has taken intense interest as this tragedy unfolds before our very eyes? Aren't we just gossipers, clickbait roaches and braying pack of wolves? Aren't we the perpetrator on the poor victim of Daystar, Joni and Doug, and their enablers and flying monkeys? Aren't we the ones that should shut up? Aren't we the perpetrators? And aren't we the ones that are going against God's will? Well, to answer those self-appointed gatekeepers of truth and morality, I would like to take an unexpected detour into Greek tragedies. See, Greek tragedies had stories unfold on stage of similar proportions of folly, moral wrongdoing, and tragic outcomes. But there was an important element to the Greek tragedy, and that was the chorus at the back of the stage. And the chorus had a number of important functions. One was to comment on the folly of the players, so audiences could agree or disagree and listen to the commentary of the chorus. The chorus would also be a voice of moral right and wrong. What was morally right? What was morally wrong? The Greek chorus also served as the voice of truth and the conscience of the community. It served to write reality through the correct lens of morality, where the players in their folly had given us, or given the viewers, a distorted view of reality, one that no longer served truth. Also at that time, it spoke of the religious norms of that time. Of course, during that time, Christianity was not prevalent, but since Daystar is a Christian organization and serves largely Christian communities, as well as those, not to be forgotten, who are seeking answers, who are not yet Christians and are looking into Christianity, and now are turned off by all the deception, all the lies, all the false prophecies. Doesn't it, it seems, reinforce that Christianity is just a bunch of hypocrites? See, and for those and for the Christian community, it is very important that the lens of reality is righted, that the voice of the religion of scriptural truth of Christianity gets its say. Just like in the Greek tragedy, the chorus would speak of the religious mores and norms of its time. See, there's an abiding hunger for truth in the human community, in human nature, whether it's Christian or not. I'm from Germany, and the first time I went to Berlin was just after the fall of the wall. You could see immediately who was from the former East. Because you see, these people seem to be oppressed, downtrodden, and the entire frame almost distorted. Because truth could not be spoken in the former East German. And the inability to speak truth takes its toll on the human soul. See, what's at stake here is more than what meets the eye. This is not just about uncovering lies and false prophecies. This is not just uncovering deceit and abuse behind the Iron Curtain of a corporate entity that has one face on the outside and a different face on the inside. This is not just about exposing folly and falsehood. This is not just a Shakespearean comedy of misguided affection. This is also about healing, individual healing and collective healing. This is about processing trauma collectively. This is about speaking truth as a root of human existence, human necessities. See, there is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where sustenance and shelter are at the bottom, we all need. But the ability to speak the truth, to hear the truth, express the truth is so important to the human soul, to our well-being, and in our relationship with God, after all. This is about showing the believer and the unbeliever that darkness is and will be exposed, and that truth will prevail. This is about a battle between good and evil. Not that each of the players are evil, but on a larger scale, truth versus falsehood, good versus evil, and the ability to uncover that. And that is at the root of this Greek chorus of YouTubers and the community at large that makes us weigh in on the situation, not as gossip, not as clickbait roaches, and most certainly not as braying wolves. Instead, it's the chorus of truth. See, the Greeks knew a thing or two about psychology. A lot of modern day psychology is based in Greek theater because they had tapped into some of the structures of human psychology and the unconscious. And they came up with the Greek chorus because the Greek chorus would reflect back to us what's truth, what is morally correct, what are the spiritual and religious norms, and to give a commentary for us to make up our own minds about the folly we see unfold on stage before our very eyes. Speak to you soon.